banked it in, and the game is tied. We're going to overtime.
You wanted an overtime? I think you're going to get one.
And we are headed to overtime.
And we are through 4 in 60 minutes. Not enough.
Oh, my God, we're going to overtime.
Welcome, everybody. It is indeed time for another Overtime podcast. Colts.com, the Colts mobile app, and the Colts audio network, wherever you download your podcast. This episode of Overtime coming to you immediately. I'm talking minutes after day 2 of the NFL draft. Rounds 2 and 3 are in the books. I'm Matt Taylor, joined by Rick Venturi, Casey Valier. We're inside the Indiana Union Construction Industry radio studio. The Colts tonight had 2 draft picks. Recapping what happened, we'll start first. We'll kind of go in order and talk about the details as it pertains to these particular draft picks. The Colts came into the night with the 46th overall pick in round number 2. They traded back initially with that. The Colts traded with Carolina. Carolina moved up 6 spots. They go from 52 to 46. The Colts, of course, trade back, and the Colts obtain 2 more draft picks for tomorrow, for Saturday's draft. These would be a pair of 5th-round draft picks, selections 142 and 155 overall. So Carolina got 46. Meanwhile, the Colts go backwards to 52, and with that pick, Rick Venturi, they drafted Adonai Mitchell, a wide receiver out of Texas. Kudos to Chris Ballard for pulling off the trade, knowing he could still be in range to grab this guy that was still around, maybe a little bit undervalued by the rest of the NFL, but man, the Colts pounced. This is a great pick to complement what the Colts have on offense.
Yeah, I think he knew what he was doing there. I think he knew what the league feeling was. And we were definitely willing to commit. Maybe some other people weren't. I'm elated. I'm elated with the pick. When I go back to my early days of watching receivers, and I watched receivers and corners first way back in January, I put Mitchell in my, definitely in the first round. I thought he was definitely a first-round talent, and that was simply on watching the tape. I thought, he was a guy that could, basically could do it all. Could play on the outside, play in the slot. I've seen him, good with the ball in hand. I thought he was very good in the red zone. Then he comes out and he has a tremendous combine. I mean, just absolutely blows it up with that tremendous speed, 4.34, the vertical, all those things that define speed, explosiveness. I know the Colts went down as a staff to Texas. They worked out all those kids. So they came back and they knew what they were dealing with, both physically and I think more important, mentally. I think they were able to satisfy themselves that they could handle any situation, regardless if it was a shadow that was true or not true. But more importantly is I think with our second pick here, we've got a weapon on offense that really is a weapon that can be a game changer. One, I think it gives us the opportunity to control the outside of the field, which I've been talking about ad nauseum. But controlling the outside of the field is not only giving you the ability to score, it's taking pressure off AR5, it's taking pressure off JT, It's taking pressure off our good inside receivers, because a team can pack 9 guys in the box, and they can take away all those things. Inside passing,
no doubt,
the running game, even the quarterback running game. What they can't do when you put 9 in there is they've got to go back out to one-on-one. And so the game,
what are you going to commit to?
The game has evolved almost all the way back to where it was when I started 42 years ago, where you played a lot of man. And so I think with this kid, it gives us really the ability to strike lightning to the outside. So, I mean, this is a guy that gives us potential game changer.
Casey, to drive home Rick's point in terms of the athleticism, you talk about the combine numbers and the measurables. 4.34 40-yard dash at the combine. That's elite. 6'2", 205 is his height and weight. The relative athletic score, that of course, that's that formula that compares draft prospects across multiple eras. He scored a 9.99 out of 10. I want to know what the .01 was all about.
And to go along.
Well, we saw what it was. It was Anthony Richardson last year.
Right.
He was the .1.
Well, and the thing about it is and to go along with that, because measurables are really important. I'm a metric guy. I'm an analytical guy when it comes to drafting. But when you look at his tape, it's very good. I mean, it's a combination of really good tape and really good metrics.
Yeah, you and I both said that, based on what you're looking at, I mean, most big draft boards were pretty comparable in terms of where they had Adonai Mitchell. He was in terms of overall prospects, he was in the top 30, and then he lasts until the 52nd overall pick here.
Yeah.
So tremendous value. Good on the Colts, again, trading back to get him. But Casey, Chris Ballard, he's pretty under control most of the time when he meets with the media. He was fired up in the post-draft press conference today, kind of defending maybe some of those off-the-field things that maybe contributed to Adonai Mitchell falling until the second round. What I may be playing catch-up a little bit. What were those things in the draft process that Chris was so fired up about?
So I remember seeing a report that said he is a diabetic, and sometimes he lets his blood sugar get out of line, and therefore he becomes a little hard to work with and uncoachable at moments.
He's hangry.
Right. And I'm just thinking, I'm like, where is this coming from? Like, when I saw this report, I'm like, is this real? Like, what is this? Clearly there was a little bit of a red flag from some teams if a guy that we've all talked about as a first-round talent
But Chris is fired
falls.
up saying, I'm not sure where it's coming from.
Right. But then those are the kinds of things
this?
that, we always talk about, that, the most probably overused mantra in any sports is the chip on your shoulder. You talk about a chip on your shoulder. I mean, this guy told the local media, hey, I feel like I'm the best receiver in this class, and, this has really frustrated me that I've fallen. I've got a GM who's going to bat for me. I mean, you talk about it, like, if they all combine together and they go out and put his talent on the field,
right.
I mean, you talk about a slam dunk for the Colts if that's the case.
Well, Rick, again, you've talked a lot about how the Colts need to start winning more on the outside and having more of a threat to help lighten the load and the overall numbers in the box, to help Anthony Richardson, to help Jonathan Taylor. To what degree does this pick with Adonai Mitchell do that?
Well, of course, we have to max him out. I mean, we have to, he is still going to be a rookie, so we have to make sure that we can get him up to speed quickly. I think it's important that we get him working the outside of the field, that we don't get too cute with him. We got Pittman, we got Downs inside. Those guys can do all that.
Right.
Let's get him outside, working on the outside quarter, the go routes, the double moves, the hitch and goes, second level outs and ins, and just get to where you're comfortable with him out there. And, the minute that Anthony sees that one-on-one coverage, he's not afraid to go to him.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. Mitchell, again, the book on him, 55 grabs last year, 845 yards, 11 touchdowns, big-time skill set. He's a transfer from Georgia in the spring of 2023. He was the Big 12 Offensive Newcomer of the Year. And, again, you talk about big play ability. That's what's exciting. That kind of drives home the point with Anthony Richardson and winning on the outside. He had 7 catches and 3 touchdowns of 30-plus yards last season. All right, so, again, Adonai Mitchell with the 52nd overall pick. Again, the Colts started at 46, moved back to 52 to grab 2 more draft picks, a pair of fifth-round picks from the Carolina Panthers with that trade back. Now, in the third round, the Colts came into the night with the 82nd overall pick. They actually move up 3 spots, and this was a trade. They go up from 82 to 79, and in the process gave up their 6th-round pick for tomorrow. So as of right now, the Colts do not have any 6th-round selections on Saturday. They did this for offensive tackle Matt Goncalves out of Pittsburgh. I'll give you the details more in just a moment. But, Rick, what was your initial reaction to not only that move, but the player they selected there?
Well, the reaction to the move is someone or the entire staff, but it's usually someone was really enamored with this kid, because I didn't know that much about this kid. This kid is not that highly rated on normal scouting reports. He's just not. And so, in my opinion, what happened, and it's probably Sperano, to be honest with you, what happens in situations like this is a position coach will either go into the workout or do extensive work on a guy and just have a feel for him and just feel like that this is a guy that, he can work with, he can bring along. He's a monster size-wise. He's 6'6", 326. He's played left tackle, right tackle. There's no question he's a road grader. And in my opinion, though, I feel like that this is the product of usually a position coach who says, I really like this guy, I want this guy, because you don't move up to get him unless there's a real desire
attraction
to have
there.
him,
Yeah.
And again, he's kind of out of nowhere on the pick, to be honest with you. There's a lot of guys around him that were better known. So
Yeah.
I think they got to know what they're doing there. They had to be committed on it. And what they're really looking at is down the road is developmental guy that once, free agency hits this offensive line or age hits it, they've got to have some depth in reserve.
Yeah, Casey, 6'6" for Goncalves. He's 330. Big-time guy that can swing between right and left tackle. He did that over the course of his career there with the Panthers. Preseason All-ACC player, started the initial 3 games last year, but then got hurt, banged up his knee, but was able to come back towards the end of the year, was a team captain last year, invited to play in the East-West Shrine Bowl game. Were you surprised that it was an offensive tackle in the 3rd round, given the fact that that's not a pressing need for the Colts going into this draft, considering you're bringing back all 5 starters, even though Braden Smith's going to be a free agent at the end of the 2025 season, and you do have depth that you're bringing back. You re-signed, Wesley French, Danny Pinter is coming back. Those guys can play the interior positions, but this is more of a tackle insurance piece down the road.
It's one of those things that, yeah, maybe I was surprised, but then, all you hear about leading into the draft is how deep the offensive line depth is. So when you start seeing all these other guys going, you kind of get that reactionary mode of, well, if I wait too long, I might be outside of that window. So you do have to, at some point, start really, looking at your board and where your other picks align, and if you can still get into that depth. So maybe it was one of those things where Chris Ballard and company saw that depth continuing to dwindle, and a guy that, as you mentioned, you got 5 starters already here coming back. And maybe they look at this guy in 2025, 26 as a guy that can compete for a starting job, and you've already got him under contract. He's been in with this system, as Coach mentioned. If it's Tony Sperano who's in there fighting for a guy, you're familiar with the coaches. Maybe that is the reason. So in some ways, yeah, I'm sure that maybe I was a little shocked just because we heard so much about defensive back this team needs.
Right.
And that wasn't the pick, but when you look at what the overall depth, when you've heard about this draft, it's been at wide receiver and offensive line, so you tap into both of those tonight, so I don't think you're going wrong there.
Who knows? I mean, Charlie Partridge is here on the defensive side of the ball. Maybe he's vouching for this guy.
Exactly. That's a good point, too. Yeah, he saw him every day. Yeah, valid.
Knowing, hey, this is tough for our group of defensive linemen to get home on this guy in terms of those pass rush drills. All right, so in totality to this point, as we are taping this immediately after the draft on day number 2 on Friday night here, it's late in the evening, about midnight. So far, the Colts have drafted Liatu Latu in the 1st round, 15th overall pick, defensive end out of UCLA. He was the first defender off the board of any kind. At number 52, Adonai Mitchell, wide receiver out of Texas. And then, again, Matt Goncalves at 79 in the 3rd round, offensive tackle depth out of Pittsburgh. Rick, just what the Colts have done so far in totality, how much better have the Colts become?
Well, I think you judge the draft historically. All things being equal, you got to hit on 1 and 2. After that, it's a little bit of a hit or miss. You're looking for specialization, but you must hit, particularly when you're not a free agent player. You must hit on 1 and 2. And when I mean hit, I don't mean just have guys that are on your roster, but guys that within 3 years have impact on your roster. And I would say that on paper, that Latu gives us the potential to have an impact guy on defense on the edge. He's a natural rusher. He's produced tons of sacks. There's no reason to believe that doesn't continue. So I think on one side of it, you've got a guy on paper that really affects your defense.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other side of the ball with Mitchell, you've got a guy that on paper can really affect the offensive side of the. So in terms of hitting on 1 and 2 on this night at midnight, I think we hit on 1 and 2.
Yeah. Also, coming up tomorrow, just to drive home the point, again, 4th round for the Colts. They will draft 117 overall. Again, the draft tomorrow starts at noon. 5th round, number 142 and number 151 and number 155. Those are a trio of 5th-round picks for the Colts. And then again, no 6th-round pick, and they will draft 7th, or I should say in the 7th round, 234 overall. So as it relates to tomorrow and what's left for the Colts, Casey, what might the Colts be targeting? I'm certainly not going to ask you players, but just in terms of positions, what are you going to be tracking tomorrow on Saturday?
I mean, I'm assuming that defensive backfield, both at safety and corner, is going to be an area you'll probably address. Chris Ballard has drafted linebackers so well, and especially in this spot of the draft, your later rounds. I mean, you look at guys like Zaire Franklin, E.J. Speed, guys that are they're pivotal to your team right now. So I wouldn't be shocked to see a linebacker, but also you mentioned it in our draft broadcast. Guys that catch the football, I wouldn't be angry to see, another wide receiver. I mean, there's, you talk about the depth of this class. It's a generational talent as far as depth goes throughout. So maybe you can tap in and get another guy. And, I mean, you can never have too many guys to rush the football because when you think about it, injuries at that position are so high. So having, depth there, if you can, find one of these guys, because running back wasn't a very high priority, position that has been selected to this point. So there's still some really good running backs that are going to be available. So, I mean, kind of everything's at your disposal in my eyes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's got to be perimeter. I mean, I think you got to see if you can crank up some a couple corners, some kids that you might like, a kid like Stiggers who played with the Toronto Argonauts who's in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's guys there, but I think you have to, particularly, I think the back end, I think you have to address it.
And tomorrow, I mean, Chris Ballard, he's not drafting Pro Bowlers tomorrow, but he has been a really good, in terms of value, bang for your buck. Yeah. Saturday's been a really good day for him.
Really good day for him. Casey hit it. He's been... and it's the other thing is there are certain positions on the third day, like safety, like linebacker, that if you really know what you're doing, you can get some kids there because those are positions that aren't necessarily determined by metrics. And you can, we've been pretty good at that.
Absolutely. All right, a very busy night. That was night number 2, rounds 2 and 3 here for the Indianapolis Colts. But again, the draft wages on tomorrow, rounds 4 through 7 on Saturday. And we'll be back tomorrow breaking it all down, recapping the Colts 2024 NFL Draft Haul on another overtime, which will drop on Saturday night following the draft. Guys, get some sleep. Fantastic job all weekend long, both on Thursday and Friday. Again, I've said this for the 100th time. Absolute pleasure to be doing this show with you guys on an annual basis.
Same for me, brother. Yeah, same here.
You got a Rick Venturi, Casey Valier right there. Again, I'm Matt Taylor. That'll do it for overtime on day number 2 of the 2024 NFL Draft. We'll do it again on Saturday, overtime on the weekend. You love it. That's what the NFL Draft is all about. Thanks for tuning in here on Colts.com, Colts mobile app, and the Colts audio network. We'll talk to you Saturday.